Hi folks, I'm going to show you how I make sourdough bread. I There are all sorts of social media groups out there that will show you precisely how to make sourdough. Um, I started with sourdough starter that I ordered on Amazon. And if you search Amazon for sourdough, you will find all sorts of these wonderful gadgets, especially jars with measuring and lines, and you can precisely control everything. I don't do any of that. I keep it simple. You need a starter. My friend told me she tried to start sourdough from just the natural yeast in the air, and it never worked out very well. What I have right here, it says Daddy Dough on it. My daughter did that. Her jar says Daughter Dough. And that's how we keep them separate whenever we are in the same area. I ordered it on Amazon, and it comes in a little jar about this big, and it was 233-year-old verified San Francisco sourdough starter. Not that that means anything. I don't care. The best way to get sourdough is to get it from somebody who does it. I have little Ziploc bags. I use Ziploc bags a lot because they're compact. I'm in the back of my truck, and this is the tailgate of my truck. I'm making sourdough on the tailgate of my truck, right? It's a little different than being in a house and doing precise measuring. And I don't want to precisely measure anything, but you need some starter. And this right here is my starter. It's in a 1-quart mason jar, wide mouth. Wide mouth is just easier to, it's easier to get spatulas in. It's just easier to use. Um, let's see. You want to feed the mother every day. Sometimes every other day is okay. If you're going to um, not make sourdough for a few days, feed it and then put it in the refrigerator and chill it down. I've got some that I froze a long time ago. I don't know that it'll I can resurrect it or not. My daughter has it. It's in her freezer. Sometime we might try to bring that back to life. I don't know. Uh, but I carry little Ziplocs, and I will give people part of my starter, and then that becomes theirs. And that's the friendly way of doing sourdough. And I think that's the best way to get it. But anyway, enough of that. In the morning, my sourdough making activities is to make a loaf and feed the mother. To make a loaf, you season to taste. I like salt. I put quite a bit of salt in mine. You can also add, if you want, herbs, things like that. You know, to give it flavor. Yeah, garlic. You could put garlic in it. My first choice is just straight sourdough. I don't really want anything else in it. I've got, that's going to be a good one. I got a lot of salt in there. I start with a little bit of salt in my mixing bowl, and as you can see, my mixing bowl isn't clean, but it's dry. And I only make sourdough in this, so it's flour. And I put a little bit of water in there and dissolve the salt to some extent. That's just how I do it. You don't have to do that. But the important part is how much water you put in it. The amount of water you put in it will determine how big your loaf is. And the reason I say that is because if you're going to put flour in next, and how much flour you put in obviously is how much food you're going to have. But it's really difficult after you've started making your loaf to add water. So you start with water, and then I'll put my mother in there, and then I'll add flour. Once you've done that, you don't add more water. It's messy. It doesn't turn out well. You don't want to do that. Um, try it. Try adding water after you've made a loaf sometime, because you want to add flour and make a bigger loaf. You'll only do it once. So I've got my sourdough here. Now, the jar is about half full, very roughly. And what I'm going to do is, this is kind of thick. It's thicker than what I normally do, but for some reason, this starter really likes the environment that I'm in. Now, as you can see, I'm precisely measuring, right? I've put about half of this. The jar was half full. I've put about half of it in there, roughly. Don't worry about it. Now I'm going to feed the starter. I'm feeding the mother. And I've got a little scoop here. I didn't measure it. I use a scoop because it's a convenient way of getting flour out of my container. You need a container. This is a stainless steel container I store my flour in. And what you're looking for, like I said, I don't measure this. I just dump it in. I'm looking for about a half a jar of mixture. And this is the sourdough starter left over from what I put in to my mixing bowl. Water and flour, nothing else. You don't put anything in here but water and flour. And then you stir it up a little bit. And don't get too anal retentive about stirring it up, because if it's got some lumps in it, it's okay. It's about half full now. So I've started with it half full. I dumped out half of that, and then I filled it back up. Now it's about half full. Over the course of the day, the sourdough is going to digest the flour, and it's going to bubble up, and then it'll settle back down to about half full. You know you put too much flour and water in it if it runs over. For consistency, and you'll run it over from time to time, don't worry about it. The passenger side of my truck's got a long streak on it that I just can't get clean from the sourdough running out. And in these temperatures, it's down close to freezing right now. You'd think this would be asleep, because that's what I do. I put it in the refrigerator to put it to sleep, and it's cool enough, but it's happy. Of course, I carry it on the floorboard of my truck, and so during the day when I'm driving, it's a comfortable temperature. But anyway, this is ready to go. You can set it aside. You're looking for something the consistency of a thick pancake batter. And don't get anal retentive about it. These tools that you'll buy on Amazon and the social media post will show you lines so you can measure and precisely get everything just right. And there are rules like 400 this, and go right ahead. And you don't need to tell me I'm doing it wrong and it would be better if I did it this other way, because I'm not going to do that. I do this kind of stuff on the tailgate of my truck And I'll do it at rest. I'm in national forest right now, somewhere in northern New Mexico. I'm kind of stirring this. This has the salt water in it. The salt, the water, just a little bit of water because I'm not making a big loaf. I mix that up just a little bit, and then I'm gonna put flour in there. This is bread flour. Don't get any other kind of flour. There's enriched flour. There's all-purpose flour. There's lots of different kind of flours. Get bread flour. You don't want anything else in there. And you get bread flour over you. I personally like King Arthur. It's a blue and white bag, and you can get 5-pound bags, $6 or $7, something like that. Get it at Costco. Costco sells a 10-pound bag sometimes. I haven't been able to find it all the time, but that's what I've got in the truck right now, or what's left of it. Now I use this little spatula thing to get it started mixing up. Now, you want to know how much flour to put in it. You put flour in it until you can make a nice ball of dough. That's how much flour you put in. And that has something to do with how much water you put in it. If you put more water in it, you'll need to put more flour in it. I start with the spatula because it's always real runny. But as the flour mixes in, it gets thicker. And it's really sticky to your fingers until you get enough flour in it. And then it doesn't really stick to your fingers anymore. And that's what you're looking for. And you do, once it's dry enough to pick up, then you set your spatula aside. And I've still got a lot of flour in that bowl that hasn't been mixed up yet. And that's okay. It won't go to waste. Because I'm going to work as much flour into this as I can. And it's lumpy. There's chunks and hard places and all sorts of stuff. The only waste I have really is what falls to the ground. And just sit there and work this with your hands until it starts feeling very smooth. And you don't want it sticking to your hands. If it's sticking to your hands, you need to add more flour. And I've got more flour here in this bowl. And by the time I'm done, I will have used most of the flour within this bowl. Now, my loaf of bread is going to be, this one's going to be a little smaller than normal. I didn't put very much water in the bowl because the loaf that I made last night, that's the one you'll see baking at the end of this video. This one, I'll bake this one tonight. But the one I baked last night was a little bigger. It filled that Dutch oven. And I prefer having one that doesn't quite fill the Dutch oven. It makes a nicer loaf. I don't want, my first choice is to have I just make a loaf and set it. Ideally, I set it on a pizza stone and set it in a regular oven. But I'm out here. I don't have any electrical power, and I quit. I've got one of those little Coleman camp ovens, but I quit carrying that. That's too fussy. I've got an electric oven right here in the back of my truck, and it works very well. But I've got to have an electric site. So I use charcoal and a cast iron Dutch oven. And I've got I don't know if you're hearing it or not, but there's a bluebird just tap 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 tap. It's sitting on my rearview mirror, tapping on the window of my truck, and it's been doing that since I arrived yesterday. Now it, of course, quit for the night, but it hung out, going back and forth from one side of my truck to the other, tapping on the window. I even opened the door and was going to let it in. It didn't want to go in. It just wanted to tap at the window. It did that. Must have done that for 3 or 4 hours yesterday until it was time to go to bed. And then as soon as the sun comes up, it's back again. Okay, now this loaf is getting to feel about right. It'll just barely stick to your hands. I mean, just barely. I've never had one that I could get so dry that it wouldn't at least feel like a tacky piece of clay. But I try to pick up all of the flour that's in my bowl, or as much of it as I can get picked up, because some of it sticks to the side of the bowl. And if I'm in a house, I will wash that bowl out, but I'm not in a house. It's cold. Now, what I did there, I dumped the last of the flour into this loaf, and it'll spit out the other side as I knead the dough. So when it starts showing up on the other side, you need to push it back down, and you'll get it. You want as smooth a consistency as you can get. You want it just as evenly mixed as possible. And this is going to be a small loaf. I have something the size of a small orange here, and that's going to give me a nice one-person loaf for this evening, and it'll easily double in size, maybe triple in size. The last few loaves I've made while I've been out here in the cold, I've had frost on my window every morning when I get up, but the sourdough just loves it. I don't know what that's about. Now, your social media post will tell you to knead this for a certain amount of time and then set it aside and then pick it up and punch it down and knead it some more and all that kind of stuff. I don't touch this again until I'm ready to eat it. I put it, if I'm in my house, when I'm done kneading this, I set it on I keep a pizza stone. I've got a gas oven, and I set it on the pizza stone in a gas oven, and I like to let it set for at least 6 hours. 4 hours is probably all right. But sourdough is different than other kinds of bread. Sourdough is, in my opinion, is a much superior food to regular bread because the mother digests the flour and makes it so that it's easier for us to digest, or at least that's what I believe is happening. don't quote me on this, but my daughter, or not my daughter, my wife is gluten intolerant. If she picks up a slice of bread and eats it, it'll make her sicker than anything. She can eat this. That's why I think it's been digested, and it makes it easier for us to digest. But I've been having this sourdough. I started over a year ago, and I make 3 or 4 loaves a week. If I'm around other people, I'll make a bigger loaf so that 2 people can share it. But otherwise, I just make a single loaf, and I may eat it in the course of one day, or I may have some today and some tomorrow. This I will cook it tonight, and I will have it available for tomorrow. But I don't normally, warm bread is wonderful, but I normally let it cool completely. And I usually bake in the evening, and then I will save in the morning. I will break it up and start eating it the next morning after it's completely cool. I do that for a couple of reasons. One reason I like the consistency of a bread that is cooled naturally, and I like that really thick crust. Um, and you get the best crust after it's completely cooled. But also, if I were to do what I'm doing now in the evening and then bake in the morning, it will have set for by the time I get around from the time I make it 6 o'clock in the evening or so until I bake the next morning, it's going to be probably 12 hours. And it's going to rise up, and then it's going to come down again. And it's a better loaf if you don't wait too long. Now, um, rising up and settling down, I want to address that one just briefly. This loaf here is fairly dry. You can see a little bit of flour on my hands, but you can see it's not sticking. It's not sticking at all. This is a nice dry loaf, so it's going to rise up tall, and this will be almost a round ball. It'll be like a big grapefruit by the time it's finished baking this evening. If it's not, if it's sticky, if you and I make both. I make tall and short. It just depends. You get tired of messing with it. But if it's a more moist loaf, it's not going to rise. It'll spread out and be a thin loaf. If it's a drier loaf, it's going to be taller. That's really about all there is to making sourdough. If you go to the grocery store and you see the sourdough, a loaf of sourdough there, turn it up and look around. It will probably say something about sourdough in there, but it's also going to say they've added yeast and added chemicals and sugars and things like that. This is the real thing. Flour and water. Add a little salt when you're ready to prepare a loaf. But it doesn't have anything in there other than flour and water and the mother. But the mother is nothing but flour and water and that original starter that you got from Amazon or from a friend or wherever. I'm going to now join the videos from what I did last night. I'm not going to pretend that I'm letting this rise for 6 hours and then baking it. But the next half of this video is about the bake. And you can use gas. I'm using charcoal, but you can use anything you want. After your sourdough has digested the flour, it will make the loaf bigger. It gets bubbles in it. And I like to let it set for at least 6 hours. And I don't punch it down. I don't have time for that stuff. But then you need, after it's done its thing for about 6 hours, 4 to 8 hours, it don't make a big deal out of it. But I do shoot for 6 hours average. Uh, then you bake it. And I have a little electric oven in my truck and a little pizza stone, and that's going to give the best looking loaf of bread. But uh, I don't carry a generator. I don't want the noise, and I don't have enough solar power to run an electric oven. So I cook with charcoal, and I have this little. It's a bit over a 1 liter oven, a cast iron Dutch oven. I think I got some kids showing up here. And when you're baking with a cast iron Dutch oven, you want your heat as uniform around the oven as you can. And so you light your charcoal, get it going. I don't have legs on my Dutch oven. So I don't have fire under it unless I set charcoal under it, of course. And I don't do that. I'll burn my loaf if I put charcoal under it. I've got a stainless steel dog bowl to contain it. And once you get your fire going, you need your coals on top. If you don't have to use charcoal, but charcoal's convenient. You can use wood fire if you want. Charcoal's a little bit more manageable, in that you can get to know how many pieces of charcoal to use to cook your meal with. That's just practice. But to keep the oven uniform temperature, you want to give it a quarter turn and then turn the lid the opposite way, a quarter of a turn, about every 15 minutes. And that will give you a fairly uniform heat all around. And I like to cook for at least an hour, but it depends on how much fire you got going, and that's a little bit unpredictable. So I like to check it after it's been going for 45 minutes or so. And they say if you're checking it, it isn't cooking, and you let heat out. But I don't really want to burn my loaf of bread, and I also want it to be fully cooked. And usually it's more of an issue to burn it for me. But if I get a little toasty, I just scrape that part off. Anyway, this will be done in a little bit, and I'll show you what it looks like. Tongs are handy too. My loaf of bread is finished now. And the challenge I have is to get it out without making a mess and looking silly. And right here it is. You can see it's not the prettiest loaf, but I assure you it's very good. Now, you would have a much prettier loaf if you set it on a pizza stone in, doesn't matter whether it's gas or electric oven, it works well either way. But you can bake. You can bake anywhere that you can have a fire, basically. So it does work.